Okay, we should be on officially. So, 2 minutes late. Oops. Good morning. Uh, here in a minute, hadn't coughed all morning. In a minute, we're going to sing number 540, but just a couple things to mention. Next Sunday is Crockpot Sunday. Also, um, those other things I've been talking about, volunteering, you can still get involved in Texas Port Ministry. It's not too late to sign up to be a mentor, Wayne. Or Jerry. Ooh, that's a frightening thought. Got Jerry sitting with your little 5th grade son. No, it would be good. I'm teasing. And although the prison training thing has already occurred, there's always other opportunities for training, so you could get involved there as well. Did I leave any of them out? Can't even say it. Pregnancy Help Center. Those are good ministries to be involved in. Are there any updates on the prayer list? Anybody have any updates? Did Josh get to come home? Okay. And your aunt? Okay. 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 All right. Any others? Okay. I'm not quite sure why I picked this song out. It gets high. That's why I'm not sure why I picked it out. I found a friend who is all to me. His love is ever true. I love to tell how he lifted me and what his grace can do for you. Saved by his power divine, saved to new life sublime. Life now is sweet and my joy is complete, for I'm saved, saved, saved. That's all we're going to do. Would you lead us, Mr. Jerry? Amen. We done? That means you can leave now. Yeah. Mmm. All right. I am having trouble. This thing wants to migrate all around my face. I'm taking orders down at Jack in the Box as we're having class. Okay. Well, I had this marked and now I lost my mark. But we're in 2 Kings chapters 4 and 5 today. We've seen the beginning of Elisha's ministry, and so now that continues as he works as the prophet of God. So imagine, and this might not be too far-fetched for some of you to imagine, you're working for the same people, but they've put you into a new job where you have not been before, and the person who was in that job ahead of you was just super at what they did. They were amazing, and so now they've put you into that new role. And so the question would be, what are some positive and negative reactions you might have to that situation? Okay. Okay. Yeah. And a positive thing would be that, when you walk into the situation, it's not chaotic. It's going to be in good shape. What about anything else, or what about negative? Okay. Pressure of expectation, and because the guy before you had done such a good job, it's like it may be an unrealistic expectation of, but the apprehension, man, of can I do, especially if I haven't done anything like this before. Uh, I know uh, different people I've talked to. They've done jobs for the company they work for or whatever, and they've been in their comfort zone, and now they get a new position. It's like, okay, what makes you think I can do this? But so that fear of not being able to do the job. Have you heard the saying, promoted to their level of incompetence, something like that? Um, Sometimes they find somebody that's good at one job and they just keep moving them up to a place where they can't do it anymore. Or sometimes they're incompetent to begin with and they keep promoting them because they to get rid of them from one area or another. So, so what do you think would be the worst way to approach a job like that? You've never done it before. The person before you was great, and so you've now been promoted to the place, and you're having your first meeting with your new team. I'm just curious how that would go. Some of you may have been in that very position. I don't know. So tell me what you did and how you felt it worked or didn't work. What ex- What do you think, Tony? Okay. Okay. Justin, you want to throw anything in there? Okay. Okay. I was thinking about that. What's that saying? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Um, I know in ministry there are a lot of guys that have their way. They're going to do things, especially in like youth ministry. They're as somebody called it, their bag of tricks that they bring to a new situation. And it doesn't matter what's been done before. It doesn't matter what worked before. Well, all that's gone. I'm not. That guy's not here anymore, so we're gonna do things my way. It's kind of the I'm the boss. Whatever happened before, what you've done before doesn't matter. We're just gonna start from here. No, we want to find out what's going on and what's working. Um, so, um, what would you think out? What would you think out? What would you think would be the main purpose of Elisha's ministry as a prophet, as the prophet in Israel? Okay. Um, if the people of Israel do not turn towards God, is he a failure? They are. Okay. Uh, because what's determining whether he's successful or not is whether he's faithful to what God has called him to do. So just suppose in your life, uh, when things go well, when in your job or whatever, things are going well, or just life in general, who gets the credit? The boss. Yeah, well, that's true. At the workplace, the boss gets the credit no matter, or well, depending on the boss, sometimes he gets the blame and sometimes he doesn't. But but ultimately, who should get the credit when things? Okay. Remember, this is a Sunday school class, so the right answer is, you know, huh? No, I'm talking about anything because ultimately, yeah, you know, look, just for you, let me put this in perspective for you. There's a story told of the preacher was having a time with his kids up front at in the worship service, and so he asks a question. Well, tell me, what has a bushy tail and lives in trees and eats nuts? And the kids are silent for a minute, and he said, "Come on, you know this. What's got a bushy tail, lives in trees and eats nuts?" And one little boy says, "Well, to be honest, it sounds like a squirrel, but I know the answer must be Jesus. So that's keep it in perspective. Here, where are we? The answer must be okay." Um, all right. So starting in, turn too many pages. 2 Kings 4:18 through 21, and then we'll skip down to 32. Um, what did I say? 18. Yep. By the way, before we get to that point, let me just tell you what's happened before. Um, there is a family, uh, a Shunammite family, a family in Shunem that were were good to Elisha. They even had built a room, uh, uh, on top of their house, so he could come and rest when he wanted to. Um, and and they didn't have any children, and that was a sorrow for them. So he uh, told the woman that this time that next year she was going to have a son, and and the boy is born. Okay, and that's starting at verse 21. Excuse me, 18. The child grew and one day went out to his father and the harvesters. Suddenly he complained to his father, "My head, my head." His father told his servants. Did I turn this on? I did. Okay. His father told his servant to carry him to his mother. So he picked him up and took him to his mother. The child sat on her lap until noon and then died. She went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, shut him in, and left. Then skipping down to verse 32. When Elisha got to the house, he discovered the boy lying dead on his bed. So he went in, closed the door behind the two of them, and prayed to the Lord. Then he went up and lay on the boy. He put mouth to mouth, eye to eye, hand to hand. While he bent down over him, the boy's flesh became warm. Elisha got up, went into the house, and paced back and forth. Then he went up and bent down over him again. The boy sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. Okay. So in this we see that this Shunammite woman had been, the family had been really good to Elisha, and he'd wanted to do something for them, so he asked God to intervene and let them have a child. They did. The boy's grown some, and now he's gone out to the field, and we don't know what happened, but my head, he went home, and then he died. Now this is kind of an unusual thing. She doesn't. The Shunammite woman does not rush out to Elisha, but she does send a servant, and doesn't tell him anything. In fact, when they go out to him, just say everything's all right. In this situation, what do you think? Her answer, everything's all right. What is that saying? Huh? She has faith, in spite of the circumstance. Yeah, in spite of circumstance, she is confident that God can do something. But in this situation where already, in fact, there's a fill in the blank that says that Elisha was a vessel of God's power, and through him the dead son was raised to life. And by the way, looking ahead, of course, Jesus is the man of God, the Son of God, with power to raise the dead both physically and spiritually. Because after all, which is a greater miracle, that this boy would live physically again, or that we can live with God eternally? Well, I know what it looks like in this life, but this life is temporary. We're not intended to live here forever. So another question is, how should the idea of God's resurrection power, how should that affect our lives and our actions today? The reality of God's power, the resurrection power, affect our lives today. Okay? And one of the things we frequently get in the habit of saying, and we do it kind of facetiously, when we say, well, hey, well, I'm on this side of the grass, and that's better than the alternative, because we're focused on this life. And yeah, from that standpoint, the focus on this life, I understand that. But on the other hand, it's better. It'll be better on the other side of the grass for those who trusted Christ. So one thing that should happen is that, people who are apart from God should repent and come to know Jesus as Savior, and that means that we as Christians should be willing to tell others about Him. Um, we think in our day that everybody knows about Jesus. Well, in our country they may know something about Jesus, but what do they know? Do they know the truth, or are they like? I'll think of that movie after a while. The name of it, where the family and their friend are sitting around saying their blessing, and they're talking about Jesus, and the Will Ferrell is the guy playing the. Yeah, and he's praying to little baby Jesus, uh, and they say, well, he's not a baby anymore. He's grown up. Well, it's my blessing, it's my grace, and I'll pray to the Jesus. And that's the idea. That people have their own idea about who Jesus is and what He is, and it's not always the reality. So one of the things that we see here is that Elisha is foreshadowing Jesus as Elisha raises this boy, and that is foreshadowing what Jesus does when He raises all of us who place our faith in Him to new life in Christ. So moving on from there is a famine in the land, and so there's not a lot of bread around. And starting at verse 42, says, the man from Belshazzar, don't ask me to say that again, came to the man of God with a sack full of 20 loaves of barley bread from the first bread of the harvest. Elisha said, give it to the people to eat. But Elisha's attendant asked, what, am I to set this before 100 men? Give it to the people to eat. Elisha said, for this is what the Lord says, they will eat and they will have some left over. So he set it before them, and as the Lord had promised, they ate and had some left over. So does this sound like anything you might have heard about from somebody before? Not before this in time, huh? But after, yes. Of the 4,000, right, that Jesus did. Here in the midst of famine, it's interesting. The man from this town that I'm not going to say again, look at the name of that town and tell me what you notice about the first part of that. There in verse 42. First word is Baal. So he's from this city that obviously the worship of Baal is very important because they've named their town that. But yet he is still faithful. Even though he's from this pagan city, he's faithful to God. Now, where was the produce of the first fruit, where was it supposed to go? Was it supposed to go to a prophet? It was supposed to go to the Levitical priests. They were supposed to deal with it. But Israel has gone so far away, they had their own priesthood that's not a Levitical priesthood. So he's not disobeying God by bringing it to a man of God, even though he was not a Levitical priest. He's bringing it to a man who honors God and worships and serves Him. And so as Elisha told, give it to the people to eat, he's demonstrating his confidence that the Lord would provide for the needs of the people. Yes, this bread is going to be enough to feed these people, and with some left over. So he exhibits his faith, his confidence in the Lord to do that. So think about ways that you've seen God provide for you. Not necessarily in difficult times, but how has God provided for you, met your needs? Anybody here have a job? Huh? Okay, all right. Provides the job, the opportunities, and so there's always that. There's other times when, I don't know, in our life, early on, it was like, well, I'm not sure that we're going to be able to eat this day, and then food showed up on the front porch, that kind of stuff. Um, just God provides. Um, so they eat the bread, and what happens? Hey, you got any more bread? I'm out. I didn't get any. Where's my bread? Is that what happened? No. Everybody ate bread, and there was some left over, just like Elisha said. Um, why did these kind of miracles happen? Well, okay, and ultimately to point to what have I said about signs? That signs point to something greater than themselves. Um, that's my definition. You can like it or not. I don't care. But so this sign was not just pointing to Elisha as the servant of God, but it was pointing to God, to God's glory. And there's an essential doctrine in Numbers 27, God's glory. The glory of God is his manifest work, the way he represents his perfect character through his activity. It also refers to his excellent reputation and is given as one of the reasons we are to praise his name. Another sense of the word is inherent beauty of God, the unbearable brightness and beauty of his being as he radiates his own attributes and characteristics for all to witness. The scriptures speak of humanity as having fallen short of God's glory because we rejected the purpose for which God created us to glorify him. That's interesting. We've fallen short of God's glory in that we've fallen short of our purpose, which is to glorify him. But of course, that's not the only way we fall short. We fall short in our behavior. Um, what's the standard for what our behavior should be? Okay. Complete obedience, perfection, and I know some of us get real close. Actually, nobody I know gets all that close to perfection. And but yet God loves us. So what are some ways we can serve God for his glory? Not our glory, but his glory. What are some ways we can serve God for his glory? Okay, just minister to others. I'm thinking, here in a little bit we're going to have a worship service, and Delaine's going to be playing the piano, and Ken's going to be playing the guitar, and they do that not for their own personal acclaim, but for the glory of God, to encourage others to worship. Um, some people, by nature, I think it's just within their personality to be encouragers, and they probably don't get any credit for that, but they encourage others. Um, there are a lot of different ways we minister and serve others, and it all should be for God's glory. Let me tell you about an incident that happened not here, but there was a ministry that was doing some good stuff through the prison system, and another ministry had come alongside them, and they were doing a lot of things as well, and a lot of money had gone into improving some things and so forth, and the leader of one of the ministries got concerned that the other ministry was getting all the credit. And because of that, because of some influence he had, that ministry got kind of excluded from that particular institution, and less is being done there because of it. All because somebody got jealous because somebody else was getting credit or more credit. You ever heard the saying, it's amazing what can happen, what can get done when people aren't worried about who gets the credit for it? That's not exactly how it goes. That's the closest I can get to it. That's an instance where people got concerned about who's getting credit. And it's a shame. Can it happen? It can happen anywhere. Should it happen? No, it shouldn't happen, but it does. So one of the basic things we can do for the glory of God is to walk in obedience. That may not get much credit at all. In fact, sometimes if we're obedient to God, we get blamed for everything. So one of the things, as we continue on, we're going to look at another incident that we've seen that Elisha, God used Elisha to meet physical needs, and as well as to heal, to provide food. But there's one more that's a little bit different. It provides, it's a healing, but there's something else that takes place as well. Chapter 5, beginning in verse, we're going to read 1 through 3 and then 10 through 16. Naaman, commander of the army for the Lord of Aram, was a man important to his master and highly regarded because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram. The man was a valiant warrior, but he had a skin disease. Aram had gone on raids and brought back from the land of Israel a young girl who served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "If only my master were with the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his skin disease." So he gets word, he goes to meet with Elisha. Verse 10, then Elisha sent him a messenger who said, "Go, wash 7 times in the Jordan, and your skin will be restored, and you will be clean." But Naaman got angry and left, saying, "I was telling myself, he will surely come out, stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, and wave his hand over the place and cure the skin disease. Aren't Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Couldn't I wash in them and be clean?" So he turned and left in a rage. But his servants approached him and said to him, "My father, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more should you do it when he only tells you wash and be clean?" So Naaman went down and dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times, according to the command of the man of God. Then his skin was restored and became like the skin of a small boy and was clean. Then Naaman and his whole company went back to the man of God, stood before him and declared, "I know that there's no God in the whole world except in Israel. Therefore please accept a gift from your servant." But Elisha said, "As the Lord lives, in whose presence I stand, I will not accept it." Naaman urged him to accept it, but he refused. And by the way, in what follows, he makes a vow that he will worship no other God, but he says, "But you need to excuse this because in my job, sometimes I have to go into the temple with my master, with my boss. So please understand that when I bow, I won't be bowing to the God of Aram. I'll be bowing to your God." So anyway, I just thought that was interesting. So what do we see here? Who's Aram? How might we know them today? Or that general area anyway. Syria? Damascus? Syria? At times they fought a lot of wars against Israel. They fought some against Judah as well in this day. And they do today too. But so are enemies, kind of, definitely of Israel. And there's a captive girl. What does she do? She's a captive. She's a slave. Works for Naaman's wife. Okay, so instead of, well, I know what fix him, but he's my enemy, so I'm not going to do that. And so she acted in compassion, I guess you could say, towards her people. In fact, it says kindness. The young slave girl demonstrated kindness by sharing with her captors about God and His work through the prophet Elisha. So, what are some ways that we can show kindness to the world today? Because you know, Naaman was kind of the enemy of this young girl, and she shared this story. Uh, and a lot of times, people in the world or the world system wants to treat us like enemies. So how can we show kindness to the world? Love them anyway. Okay? Pray for them. Okay? Anything else come to your mind? Okay. Uh, Try to find ways to serve them, to meet their needs. Okay? Um, and be ready to tell them about Jesus. You know, I know they may not want to hear it, so we look for opportunities and pray about them beforehand. Um, you have anybody at work that really gets under your skin? Probably. You're not sure. Oh. We're not talking. Well, you know, one thing you can do if there's somebody at work that maybe is antagonistic, maybe get a chance, take them out for coffee or Dr. Peppers, whatever it might be, and just visit with them. Maybe even uh, think about trying to share your faith with them. And if nothing else, well, how can I pray for you? You know, there are a lot of people don't want to hear about Jesus, but they might be willing to let you pray for them. And that could be the beginning that you get to build that relationship. Um, and one of the things that we know, God does desire that all people in every nation would come to know Jesus, believe in God, and glorify Him. And that's one of the things we see here is that Naaman, this enemy of Israel, has been healed, and now apparently more than just physical healing, but also he recognizes that God is God, and only God is God, and so has turned to Him. And that's the reason why God sent Jesus, so that people all over the world would believe and come to have faith and know Jesus. Um, so throughout Elisha's ministry, there were faithful people and really faithful servants of God. Uh, that that mother, that Shunammite mother who knew her child could live again. The young girl who spoke out, believing that her master could be healed if by God's power if he went to Elisha. Um, and so God does uh, honor those who have faith and act in faithfulness. Um, but all that points to the greater ministry that Jesus came to do. So how should faith in Jesus, who is the powerful Son of God, more powerful than this man of God, how should that affect the way we think, speak, and act this week? You know, we're not talking about on down the road, but how should it affect this week, the way we think, speak, and act this week? Should it have an effect? Okay? We ought to be able to think, speak, and act in confidence that God's in charge, that God is with us. And, and please don't misunderstand. This is not, we believe, so we're going to get a free ride. Everything's going to be hunky-dory. It just means that we can have confidence that no matter where we are, what we're doing, God is with us, and God will be faithful to us. And remember, it's about His glory, not our comfort. We seem to lose sight of that these days. Not necessarily us personally, but many do. When tragedy strikes or hard circumstances come, our deepest beliefs are revealed. And it's not wrong to feel pain or when we're dealing with sickness or death or sorrow, because the world is broken and there are difficulties. But even in those times, we can experience the comfort of God's presence and power. So how have you experienced the comfort of God's power in difficult times? Well, I think about, when my dad passed away. For me, it was, knowing that he was forgiven and in God's presence, that his 12 years of hacking up a lung every other minute, that was gone. And so there was that. Did I miss my dad? Well, duh. I still miss my dad. And he's been dead for 40-something years, I guess. But what about other times when we've gone through loss or struggle? I just think about Harvey and all the tough times related to that so many went through. And was there ever a moment when you thought it's never going to get better? But it did. And yeah. What are some ways that we can care for people's physical needs this week? As I think about that, my first thought is, if we come across someone in need, what can we do? And I know, we don't like to put money in people's hands because a lot of times it goes for the wrong things. But if you see somebody hungry, what can you do? Feed them. Let's go here to Whataburger, Whataburger was closed last week. I hope they're open this week. But anyway, what can we do? Let's go feed them. Here, what? She doesn't like Whataburger. That's why they were closed. On the day that Charlie and I were going to go there and eat there, Charlie Lackey and I were going to go eat there, and we went somewhere else. So, but feed them. They need a coat. Get them a coat. Whatever it might be. By the way, they probably don't need a coat this week. Maybe next week. A few weeks down the road. But also, what about spiritual needs? What's the greatest spiritual need a person has? They need Jesus, and so we can be ready to witness. Even if all you can say is, Jesus is making a difference in my life, and He can make a difference in yours. It's a starting place. All right. So I'm done. So, Ken, would you dismiss us? back on at 10:50 if you're watching online. But if you're in our area, we'd love for you to join us in person. It's something unique that happens when we gather in one place. So I'd invite you to be with us if you can. But if not, like I said, we will be back on at 10:50.